that we will quality of service policies. And Brian is going to do this section of the training course to turn to continue with the service level agreement policies. Now, what should you put in here is the now is still policy manager 6.0, and we're using 6.1 for all the training, the hands-on. So you see additional quality of service policy types that you can define are now actually box and through an action pack. But as part of the hands-on, we'll actually be using the service level quality service policy types. There are others that can be configured, whether it's creating a service policy to monitor the bandwidth or the throughput. Okay, we're in the process of updating the training slides, and when they're available, they will be on the support site for download. I'll hand it over to Ann. Do I have to make you? Yeah.
Got that. Thank you. Thank you, Cheryl.
Okay.
You guys see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. Cheryl mentioned before when she was doing the setup for the new contracts, the new contract will define the service and the identity and also the service level. And demonstration, she's covered the be able through the contract and be authorized to use the service. At this, I'm also going to go ahead and define a service level policy to that. So we can also guarantee some sort of service level that's going to be enforced by the policy. By the contract. So in this case, we'll show how our QoS or the quality of service policy are created and applied to the contract. In applying the QoS policy to the contract, we ensure that the service level is set between the consumer here and the provider. So, and this QoS policy can be attached to either the contract, service, or the organization. Go ahead and create a QoS policy that will send an alert. The consumer sends more than 3 requests to the account manager virtual service we created earlier. But before we go ahead and create the QoS policy, we need to go ahead and create a custom alert code that's going to by the QoS policy, and this code will be used to indicate that the service level agreement tied to the QoS policy has been violated. So to go ahead to create the alert code, you go to the Alerts tab, to the Alert Code section, the out-of-box alert codes that you'll see in the alert monitoring section of service or the container. But I'm going to be adding my alert code. And code you can use to here will be somewhere above the level. So I'm just going to say 100055. That'll be my alert. For component, you can use any name. I'm going to go ahead and use check LA. It's policy manager. It's also arbitrary. I'm going to say it has been violated. Okay, now I'll go ahead and leave the severity as is. You can also have alert. The alert is raised. You can also attach several other actions to it, such as you can have it execute a certain script by the management script. Can also have, when this alert code is raised, you can also have it a certain email group defined in the policy manager. That's going to require you to define an SNMP host group, but also do that as well. But at this time, I'm just going to see raised in the alert monitoring tab only. So my code has been created. I'm just going to check to see that created. Okay. Find a QoS policy. So I'll go back to Workbench. QoS policy section. The QoS policy, I'll just name it. Oh, there it is. And this type will be a policy. Now, now that I have the policy created, I have to go ahead and associate it with the custom alert code that I created just before. So I'll hit modify here, and the go associated with my alert code metric here. The service level. So I'll define this used in the service level agreement. So I'll just say it's usage count, and if the usage count is then 3 counts in a certain interval. 15 minutes. So going to service level policy agreement, it's be raised if 3 requests or usage count made to a particular service that's attached, that's defined in the contract. So I defined that. I'm going to hit next. Just going to select today's date for the service level policy access time and all day. The profile set as GMT. So delete this, and I'll go ahead and change my profile to PST. Okay, so I'll just go back to my profile and modify my profile to use PST. Okay. And I'm back to my workbench. And now that I have my policy created, I'll go to the name contract that I created when I was following Cheryl's exercise. And here's my name contract. That's provider operation as list accounts and identities. And to add the QoS policy, but I can't. That's because this policy is currently active. To go ahead and deactivate this contract, okay, I'll go ahead and just created. So I now have a contract that defines here, and then the consumer or the risk and the consumer identity here, and policy, and then enforce this contract by clicking on activate. So now the contract set with the Q policy that says if you make a service request to this operation more than 3 times, it will raise an alert. So, okay. I'll just go to my virtual service here, and notice that also define the quality service here as well, as the service level policy can be attached to the organization, service, or the contract. And I'll make the request also UI. Sorry, and I know you can't see it. Request 3 times, and then so that I made the request, I'll go to the monitoring tab. Wait, sorry. Hasn't attached to. Maybe I was a little too quick. Okay. So that service level contract applies to this contract. Do it. Let's see, I'll just make a couple. level. Oh, there it is. Sorry. To the very top registry level, and I need the alert code that I created here. It's saying the usage service level agreement has been violated. And if I click here, it'll show more detail. It'll give you the name of the contract and the time of the when alert was raised. So, and after the service level agreement was for 15 minutes as defined in the contract. So after 15 minutes, you'll see on the alert section here that the SLA has been cleared. Then flag will reset and it'll be again after after it becomes violated again. So, and for the QoS policies, does anybody have a question?
Hey, Brian, it's Eva. Quick, when you modified that contract, you had to deactivate it first. Could you have just contract and kept it in force and then created a brand new version?
Yes.
Right, because you'd at least have some contract in place rather than no contract in place the duration of the change, I would think, like
right.
An environment,
right.
for example.
That's correct. Not activated.
But an option. I could have done it either way, but I could just do a new version. Okay.
Sure. Okay, with that, and pass it to Cherryl.
So just a couple things to fit on the SLAs. So if you look here, see the delay violation, and you can see the clear code. So the clear code that gets an SLA is always the same. So you have to remember that, especially if you're forwarding to an SNMP management system. The note is that SLA has violated. If the SLA is continually being violated, you're not going to continue. If I instead 5 requests instead of 3, I'm getting 2 additional alerts once the SLA has been violated. You only get an alert when the SLA has been violated, and you get an alert when the SLA has been cleared. If there is no violation within the time frame that you have set for SLA, then you will eventually get a clear alert code. But if the SLA is continually being violated, you would not get additional violations until the alert, the clear is actually sent. Okay, so the one other point, as Brian was going through the SLAs, is there are several metrics you can use when you create the service level policy, whether it's or whether it's you can actually also, which is probably what most people use, the average response time. You can take the total request message size, min or the max message size. All of these can be used as the SLA U8. Okay, does everyone understand this whole idea in terms of the learning and so these management scripts and the SNMP hosts and email groups? So basically, if you want an SNMP management system, you need to fill in the details for the management system and when you want that forwarding to happen. You would set up your FTP server information and define the time frame in which you want that forwarding to actually occur. For instance, if you want to actually execute a management script or some type of script outside of the policy manager processing, policy manager will actually execute that external script and run whatever is necessary. So when you management script can actually pass alert parameters to the script, so that, for instance, if you wanted to write the alert to a file, you could actually pass these parameters to write that information about the alert to the file. So SLAs, multiple SLAs in any place of the objects in the org tree. And if you attach an SLA at the org level, then if the same message, the use 3, if you attach that at the engineering organization, it will really look at the and all those services underneath there and take the cumulative total. So that means if there were 3 requests sent to any services within the engineering organization, an SLA violation. It has the organization level, at the contract, or at the service level. You can have a combination of SLA defined as well. Oh, sorry, another thing I should mention. When the QoS policies are defined, you can set in the policy types, just like we have operational policies, you have the various different types of policies. You also have for the QoS policies. So not only can you measure for agreement, but you set something for measuring the bandwidth, the current connections.
Cheryl, so where would we put some check for, like, the number of times a user we are seeing some failures, which means a hacker or somebody is trying to get in between, right? Doing an attack or something, some activity is going on. How would we identify that?
You're going to have usage data collected. You know within a certain time frame if there's requests. Like if all within a 15-minute time frame, 200 requests for a particular service, that could trigger an alert. So you could use the standard SLA policies to do, but it should you could different type of policy where you're actually looking at the amount of data being sent for a particular service. Or you can look at the throughput.
See, if we look at the quality, like the bandwidth or the quotas, right? There could be my legitimate user who is doing traffic, right? But then in between, somebody is also trying to probe and see, okay, you know what is the right password or how can I get in, right? Those kind of attacks if somebody is trying to
get in and they're trying passwords, right? For the most part, they're going to be getting authentication error or authorization error. So in the case, you're going to want to set up something for you want to set up an SLA policy for the number of faults. SLA policy faults is great in a certain interval, but all faults, not just authentication errors. You cannot really so say you're looking for the number of authentication errors within a certain period of time. Total number of faults, whether the authentication or some type of error.
Okay.
Level on a virtual service, you can also set up denial of service rules. Here on my virtual service, I could set up a rule where you press range and message size, the transaction rate. Or level, more at the TCP level, the application level.
Right, okay.
Press *6 or pound.
Any other questions? One thing I should also mention is forwarded to an S&P system. Now, part of our standard installation, you can act MIB. So we provide a MIB for our alerts, and that MIB to install directory here. It's actually in the MIB. It's actually provide this MIB to the SNMP, the operations group that's in charge of your SNMP management system, and they can load into their system so that they'll come out in a user-friendly format. Okay. Okay, I've been talking for the past day and a half about really the runtime piece of the policy manager, how you create contracts, how you create policies, attach policies, and that. But there is to object-based on the policy manager console so that not all your users are able to have the ability to go as an administrator like we all are and make changes within the console. Itself provides some role-based access. So if you go in the Workbench tab to the top level registry node, you'll note on the right-hand side under the Configure tab, there's a Security subtab. And in that Security subtab are out-of-the-box roles that we provide and the ability to create your own roles that you can define based on the requirements for users needing access into the console. Create any type of roles you do have to have administrator privileges to be able to do that. So various different types of roles. You can privileges to the districts that are accessible within the policy console. So see here that you provide the privileges that you can set for an organization, a service, contract, container, policy, and identity. And for objects, you see, based on the object that you select, you see what type of access you can provide to that object. So, organization. For an organization, you could provide a user you can provide the ability to add, to read, to modify, delete, monitor, or assign a policy at organization level. And the same, depending on the object, you have types of privileges, whether it's a service, contract, container, or an identity. You look then at this matrix, and you look at the red X's. These would be the privileges required to create a read-only role. Would allow a user to monitor services within an organization. Okay, so we need access to two different objects, and 4 different privileges need to be set. The organization, read on the service, monitor the service, and read as a provider on the service. I'm actually going to set that up so that you can see how you can create various different roles. And system administrator is one of those privileged roles. The administrator has full access to policy manager. So the system administrator is equivalent to the default administrator that you create new initial policy manager. And assigned as privileges have the equivalent of that administrator privilege to make sure that you are users system administrator privileges. Do assign users system administrator role, then you do this here at the top level node. So I'm going to go back to the policy manager console, level registry node. You'll see subtab on the right-hand side and role members. So these are the roles that are defined out of the box, and globally you can assign role memberships to each of these different roles that are defined. So here at System Administrator and look at users, all the admin users that are part of the training domain to this particular role. That's why a single user, admin user, has to be able to see the full, have access to everything in the policy manager console. To the particular roles, you can either select individual users. They could come from different domains, or also assign different groups as well. So it could be from various different domains as well as different groups. To role global roles here, but in roles that you define and use different organizations. So when custom role, you do from the registry level of the organization tree. So from the top level where we were just at, you create your custom roles. And then once you actually create those roles, then assign the privileges for those roles. You assign objects that those roles have access to and the privileges for each of those objects. Here you can see for the organization it's read. For the search you have monitor, provider, read, and read access. You'll be able to do this well. Once your role's created, as I said, user roles that are actually to create or to the global rules. Then you make sure that you select the organization that you want to assign the role, a role to, and then you go to the security sub-tab at that organization level to assign the user or the group to that particular role. And you'll, depending on the create, different views into the policy manager console. So you can see here logged in, it's only able to now see the training organization and the services in that training organization. That user is not able to see the contracts, the policies, or the containers, right? Because that user was only given privileges to the services. This is organization view administrator. So you can see now you're editing what this user has access to view. A user that access to only engineering organization and to read, monitor, and view the policies for that organization. I'll go back into the policy manager and top registry node. Okay, registry node, and you select the security subtab on the right-hand side. Role definitions portlet, you'll see at the bottom right of that portlet, there's an add role definition button. So you're going to click on that role definition button to add your read-only role. So all these are going to be here in the same screen. Just make sure you can identify your you're creating. Read-only role. Okay, so you want to be able to read the services and policies in organization. See at the bottom left of object security privileges, you're going to click on the add a privilege. And in that pull down, you can select the various different types of objects that you want to define privileges to. So the first is the organization. So you're going to select the organization and you're going to next button. So for the organization, we just want to be able to read the organization. Okay. Now we need to actually add another privilege for the service. Again, on the add privilege link at the bottom left, object type pull down, now select service. And go ahead and click on next. And you're going to read as monitor. Then click next. To view the policies, we add another privilege. So go on add privilege. See object type. Click on next. To select read for the policy. Okay. And now define to need to assign a user to that particular role So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just show you so everyone sees you can create local users in the policy manager's database. Okay, local users, you do from the security tab, the main security tab, the fourth one from the left. Click on the security tab, that top tab. You'll see that you can users and users group subtab. User into a local domain. You can default the training domain is selected at the bottom right. The because you can't add users into an external domain. But in option, if you go and select the local domain, that these are the users that are actually defined within the local policy manager's database. Now, because we're at the database, at the bottom left, see that you have an Add User button now. So Add User button, and add a user name, full name, password. Those are the things that are required. And go. Okay, so you should find. So these users here, again, users that are defined within the local policy manager's domain. So this user and assign this user that role created. So if you click back to the Workbench tab, the second one to the left at the top, sorry, the web, you go to open up your organization and your engineering organization. And engineering organization selected, you should sub-tab on the very right-hand side, a security sub-tab. At security sub-tab, you should see the rules that created, and you should see your only role. Click on that Manage Role link on the right-hand side. User that you just created in the local database to that role. So, whereas add all users from the domain, actually, no, search for this, so use the second option, search for users or user groups. You're going to select within, in the within, select local domain, and the main pull down and select contains, and then search button, you should see all the users. For user, to the right-hand side. On apply. You've done is you have assigned a particular user a role to the engineering organization. All right, of the policy manager console. And now the user that you just created and assigned that role as, here in the policy manager, select the local domain. domain. Now you should see a different view to see your own organization and see services and policies folders. To see any organization, I presume. Services under the or is that we find for by default the service deployed in the policy manager can't be in a draft state for you to be able to see them even with read-only privileges. So for you to see them with read, you're going to have to echo so that the service is no longer in a draft in a state. Okay, so and log back in as your admin account. And just engineering organization. So say select your virtual service. Now you right hand side in the workflow port that virtual service. That service is in a draft state. So in order to show up, you're going to have to get it past being draft state. So to do this, click the submit for approval link at that portlet where it says actions. If you approve, or read-only user, that service. My virtual service. So the roles plus flow that are actually controlling what you're able to see in the policy manager console. You use workflow, other customers that just flow. Okay, on that, just talk for a minute about the extra second. Okay. So I just want to talk a little about integrating with third-party identity systems. So within this training, we've been an LDAP directly be able to access our from the Policy Manager console. Now we've been also using the LDAP directory to do authentication for runtime, like our application IDs. So the Policy Manager does have the capability to integrate with third-party identity systems so that you don't have to actually recreate all those users again. You can leverage your existing identity or authorization purposes, also to allow you to log into the Policy Manager console. So the out of the box support different types of identity systems. There's a cookie module that can be used between components. There's with an LDAP server, and that LDAP server, whether it's Active Directory, which many use, or some other type of LDAP implementation can be used. Cerberus, well, with YAML. IT systems are supported out of the box, and when you go to this configure tab, Policy Manager, and the tab and identity systems, you see the types of identity systems supported. Now, with Policy 1, we also support a claim-based identity system, which is a Microsoft solution. We can support these identity systems, as well as we can integrate with other systems, such as or Oracle Access Manager. Those can be integrated with as well. Those you need additional features added into your containers. Identity systems, again, these are created from the configure main tab, the identity system subtab, based on the system type that you select, that determine the properties that you need to add for the type of identity system that you're creating. Okay, so the app server, you need the host, the bind the base for the user, for the groups that you want to search for and use. Server, it would be the same type of things. You would need very specific verbose details in order to configure within your Policy Manager configuration. So configure these identity systems, which we call, sometimes they're called external domains. You'll hear different systems, external domains. You use these to be able to access objects in the console. So you could use them for role-based access into the console. you could use for runtime, which means assigning application identities to abstract, or whether you're going to use those identities or users to authenticate users as they're invoking services, or to authorize users at runtime when the services as well. Majority of use some type of external domain if it allow access into the console, so they could use their Active Directory to log into the Policy Manager console. Okay, actually went for third-party identity systems.
I have a question.
Okay.
The certificate, right? Like for a digital verification, certificate for a particular user, right? So if the user resides in some other system, I mean, the certificate also be in that system, because I heard you mention that it has to be in the policy manager database, right?
Right. That is true. So it cannot be the certificate, no matter what, is going to have to reside in the policy manager. So there has to be some mapping. So if, for instance, your user, say you wanted to authentication for a user in our training domain, which is an LDAP server, you usually have to it for that user in Policy Manager console, so that certificate, there's a mapping in the database for that and that certificate. So you can see here when I go to the users in the external domain, here there is the option still to manage the PKIs. So load the certificate for the user. The certificate cannot exist. Policy Manager cannot pull the certificate from the external system. It has to actually reside in the Policy Manager's database.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, pero no está aprobada la ley.
Okay. So now let's look at, oops. Part of the hands-on exercises, we looked at monitoring capabilities that were available just in order to see our requests going through, but there are a few others that you should be aware of. Of monitoring, you have real-time monitoring, which allows you to view the real-time activity for a 5 to 60-minute time frame for a particular service or for an organization. Okay, so those are charts, which is provided by using the basic auditing policy, which allows us to collect next about the request and response being processed, and just high-level statistics, how big the request was, how big the response was, the response time, and things like that. So most people in a production environment will want to use a basic auditing policy, want that high-level information and the response. The recorded data, which is provided by the auditing policy, and that full request and response data includes all the headers. When you use a detailed auditing policy, it's going to collect all, and optionally, as I can collect the information for what the ND is actually sending to the physical service and what the physical service is returning to the ND. So all it is the auditing policy, and therefore, because you're collecting the payloads and the payloads can vary in size, you want to be careful in terms of using that detailed auditing policy. So really we recommend using that for auditing. Data. So that the historical data is the monitoring data that's collected over a period of time. So you can look at the that have been over the period of a month and see if there are any trends as far as usage or response time, and be able to keep on the amount of traffic that's processed by the work director. Finally, there's the dashboard. So the dashboard is the policy manager on the policy manager console. It's first tab to the left, and then configurable dashboard that allows you to monitor and get a whole overview of the traffic, the real-time traffic for select services and that are being generated by services. Okay, so charts look like. So for service, you're able to see the faults as well as the successful requests. So this is the service, the monitoring subtab, and the real-time charts. Auditing policy attached to any of the services in an organization. Auditing here at the organization level. Basic auditing at the service level as well. So when you go to the monitoring logs at the service, you're only going to see that particular service, where if you go to the organization, you'll see the usage data for all the services that are part of the organization. Okay, the educational policy, we did actually this, it and the load for response, and you have it enabled for downstream response as well. And this will only be used really for troubleshooting, because stored in the database. So if you don't, we wouldn't. Is available, so you can at the organization can select the historic or the you can select the historical charts as well. Historical charts, you can either view them as chart as a table. See, say the usage, the response time, the average response time, service by operations. There are options that are available for these historical charts. Always export the data well to a CSV file or an L file, so you can do further analysis on that if that's required. Monitoring operation level or even at the top level registry node, we saw there are alerts that are generated in the event of an error, in the event of an SA violation. Alerts are captured and stored in the database, stored in at the top level, at the organization level, or at the service level as well. Okay, you'll see these are all components that have generated monitoring subtab. Now are the alerts generated and else for those alerts. All right, your dashboard. So the dashboard is actually this first tab to the left. So based on configurable and these data of the activity for these services and the alerts that have been generated for those services that you're displaying in your dashboard. Create a dashboard. I'm actually going to show you this in the Policy Manager console. Here's the dashboard. You can search criteria for the dashboard. So I can create, if I want to, I create dashboard. Add criteria for create. You go here to the edit button and where, say, if I want all the service is virtual. Okay, all the virtual services. It'll, let me show 6 of them. 6 alerts. It'll show me 6 of the virtual services and the alerts associated with those virtual services. Let me just send a request. When through, you're able to see here. So here you're able to get an idea of happening with the services that you have managed. And you can create multiple boards, and it's just a way to get a bird's eye view of what's going on with services that you actually have in your manager. Okay, on the board. Okay. One that come up as you have your SOS infrastructure in place, start setting things up, if you move from one environment to another. So set up in the dev environment, now you want to set it up in Q environment. So, and within the policy manager, we have the ability to export and import from one to another, or one policy manager to another. We have a tool export to a file, and then you can move that file from one environment into your environment and use the import tool in property file to your target environment. So export an organization, contract, service, or a policy if you need to. And when you do the export, it's to create a zip file to the target environment. The target environment, your services, but work directors may name differently. At one point, the service URLs could be on different servers. They aren't the same. So to do this mapping, to make the mapping, you don't have to go through and change every single physical service to point to. You can activate the import property file. And the tool will then read this property file, and it will map then the source URLs or network director names to for the director names that you'll be using in the target environment and the URLs that you'll be using in the target environment. Page export functions are at the organization, or you can export a policy as well. You'll see these objects. In portlet, you will see an export organization or an import package function. The X allows you to export the object. The import allows you to import whichever package that you're importing, whether it's an organization, a service, or a contract. To export, you have the options to set what you want to export. You can export operational policies, these compliance policies, metadata, attachments. Is the source environment are network director containers or external domains. So you need to, before you actually do the import into the target environment, in the target environment you need to make sure that you have your network director containers configured and you created your external domain. So your external domains being you created your domain, whichever it may be. Okay, list then of what you need to do in order to do export and then the import. So which objects you want to export from your source environment. You need to export everything. You may just be exporting the services. You create a property file for the target environment to do the mapping between the target URLs and network director container names. Environment, you prepare the target environment and create the objects that are not exported, and you modify. You'll need environment workflow if you are using workflow to the workflow changes that are required for once are imported into the target environment. Because workflow may change, right, when you go from development to QA. You may need approvals or you may need more approvals once you start moving into those higher environments. Workflow may need to change to reflect what is required or to activate those contracts. The target environment, writing the property file that does all the mapping between the source and the target URL and container instance names. Import and the export option can export the objects, but create the initial, no matter what, in your environment, you're going to install product, you're going to need to create the containers, you're going to need to load the database schema into the target environment, and before you can actually do into the target environment. If you do have to use the product to do the import, the product file is a simple keyword value property file. So here would be the source container key and the target container key. You have two containers, the source container key and target container key. URLs. Okay. A source URL to mobile target in some type of load balancing of the physical services. as well. And then use JAM destinations in the source and the target also. Okay, your workflow, import into the new environment. In the workflow, all the workflow is initiated through an action. So default workflow are these import contract actions. And these into a workflow. So when I import a service into my target environment, the workflow is actually going to start at this point. So here in a service, as soon as I import a service into a new environment, the workflow import service is in staging. Okay. If you need to modify the workflow and you're using workflow in your environment when you do the import, you want to make sure that you're looking at or of the process that you want to go through, once that service has been imported into the target environment. So you import, by default, our default workflow, if you export a contract from one environment and import it into another environment, each contract in the source environment was activated. When you import it into the target environment, it's activated. It's going to be in draft to the target environment and activate the contract. Okay, are there on the workflow? So we have just a few more sections to actually finish up. So why don't we take a quick break here? So we'll just break for 10 minutes till 5 to the hour. And I'll finish up with the troubleshooting and we'll just go through a few things on support. It's here. All right, let's the two sections of training. Once you manager and everything up and running, understand how do you troubleshoot and maintain your policy manager installation. So you issues is always check the policy data for any system or service alerts. So that's a place to look if you feel you're having some type of problems. And able to determine what the problem is from the alerts. If you enable the detailed auditing policy, that gives more information. And the log file for more detailed information. Each of the default will log any errors to respect files. So you here that we're using. If I directory installed, you can see a log directory, log file. So errors that have in the director, those will be logged in the log file. So if we look, at in this, to invite, and there was no contract for that operation. So what's an contract of implementation error or in the log files if they actually transition. So in just having the error is not, in which case you get into support at SOA and are going to require more detailed debugging to try what the problem is. Enable the logging for the container. That's from the admin console of the container. You can enable the logging any restart of the container. So you can enable the logging, you can disable the logging. At that point, you need to restart the container. So in console of the master, to configuration tab. And category, the console.log category, you can see all these log point error. Even just this one category, SOA.com package, I get a lot more detailed information, not just for every request that's going through the policy manager. So I'll look at these changes and back and look at the file. Almost, I should start seeing more. I am. They're actually traced. They're just from different jobs, for example, that are running in the policy manager. So that's one area where you can actually it's logging, and that will help in trouble. The other thing is one. Okay, so log file, you can send that to support@soa.com, and provide also the update information on your policy manager installation, and then we can help as far as that goes. The thing you can do is that all the services are deployed. So there are other tools that are available. So again, if you use the default servlet, you can all the contexts are available on this particular network. So this, for instance, if you want to just verify that all the services have been deployed on your use this URL to do that. Okay, the necessary is to install a tool here. And again, it doesn't require a restart. And I log the memory by the virtual machine. You can connect connections. Now this you'd install this if you talk to SOA support and they said, okay, I think we need some monitoring of these internal settings. Have this installed. Okay, the URL to show you is the state of the container. So the URL or a feature that you can install, which is the ping. If you install the feature, all it's doing is being the container is listening on its port number. It hasn't actually it won't tell you if all services have been deployed. So some customers of ours that have hundreds of services on their network director, it takes a little while for the network director to come up, but it's not actually ready to receive requests. So we've added that allows you to be able to test the container is. So, okay, so you go to container and then the config up, and you're a username, and so this would be the admin console's username and password. And the config state is returning configured. If I bring the network director down, which I'll do right now, you'll see container configuring. Once the services are actually deployed on the container, it'll say configure. So all the services have been deployed. This is a way that you can actually just check the state of the container if you needed to do that to make sure that all the services have been deployed and the is up and running. And this really is the URL that you should use if you have a load balancer. And the balancer should look for this specific content. So this is it's a later update of Policy Manager 6.0, I think in 6.0.27, you have to have at least that. In 6.1, well. Yes?
Is that part of the ping support?
No, it's not part of the ping support. It's just part of the container. So you don't need features installed in the console.
No, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Tips as the troubleshooting and you'll with the log files know to enable the log files, the information, and more from that you're seeing. this is just going through the information that I just went through in the admin console itself. Okay, so to touch upon before I ask for any questions on anything else is just going through a little bit on the support site. So any type of issue, you should always submit a ticket to our support ticketing system. The thing is these tickets distributed to a number of people, and we have visibility to all the issues that are open. So if you send it to just a particular person, that person may not be here, the process can just escalate. So send everything into support. If the ticket is a critical, make sure that in the subject of the email, that ticket is production critical, or a private high, or something to identify that is an important ticket and is affecting your production, especially if it's affecting your production. The support site, you go to SLA.com/support, and you'll have access into the support site. So if you go to the support and your password, on the support site, you see that there are various different categories that you can go to. You can do all your tickets and status of the tickets. Right? You create the ticket. And you can do also. Okay, you can do this all from the support site, but if you want to do it via email, you can do it from email. Sure that when you reply to the ticket, that the subject in the ticket will be the ticket number. The number is always included in the subject of the email. So for you here, let me just go to just one. Okay, so if you look here in this particular email, when you leave a ticket, it's going to come in with a number in the subject. So reply, just make sure that you keep this ticket number in the subject, and it will automatically append here to the support site to that ticket. To the home, so you can view the tickets, you can upload your files and attach tickets as well. There's an extensive knowledge base of articles and any of the updates. That the contents of those updates are in the knowledge base, so you can really search the knowledge base as well. Specific use case. it from the support side, and here news articles. So an submit a so if you actually subscribe to our news here email address, anytime update or there's any big news, we will actually send out a news article. So I recommend that everyone actually subscribe to these news articles so that you get updated whenever we do have a new release. So in this section, depending on what products you are licensed for, you will be able to see the very here. Folders will be the software. So if you go here into Policy Manager, you'll see that there's a 6.0 and a 6.1. There's some tech notes, and those as all of the up. Okay, so you all from the support site. So if you wanted to download then the online training 6 slides as well as hands-on piece. Are there any questions now? There's I finished all the content as far as the course materials. So are any items that you have in regards to the court or that you've heard within the last couple of days?
Materials and password. Do we need to log into the site?
You own ID and password. You have one already. It should be your user, or it should be an email address and a password. If you don't have one, then go submit an email to support.soa.com, and then the support group will actually activate your you can log in.
Yes.
You have an ID because I haven't asked them to give you an ID? You're with Verizon?
Okay. Do you materials? Oh, from you, right?
Yes, you could.
Okay.
So I hope over the course of these past two that you will actually demo use case, right? You need a virtual service. You can apply a policy to that service and know how to actually invoke the service, monitoring, and be able to or feel comfortable doing that. And the product itself is a very big with a lot of functionality, but we touched on really the core pieces of the functionality so you know what is available. And if there's specific use cases that are specific to a customer or to what you are doing within with the policy manager and the network director or whatever SOA components that you're using, then we can go through those settings and we can do actually set cases if you have problems actually setting those up. Okay, that then, I don't have anything else. I just wanted to thank everyone for joining the class and participating and being on time and questions that come up as you're going through the material, or again, if you have specific use cases that you'd like to review, then you can just let us know. Okay, now address to everyone in the chat window so that you have that if there are any additional questions. So everyone have a great week, and thank you for joining.
We appreciate it.